Yes, hello, my friends, and happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully, you had an amazing day. I had a great time with my mom, my dad, my friends, my family. Delicious meal, ate a ton, and now we have to walk it off a little bit. The news was pretty light. Not a lot of activity out there, of course. Government's closed, and most journalists are taking the day off, but the White House made sure that everybody was very prepared for the Thanksgiving dinner table political conversations. I don't know if you saw this, but a lot of activity on Twitter on this one. The White House Chief of Staff, Karine Jean-Pierre, they put together a big list of bullet points about how great of a job Joe Biden's doing. And they were retweeting that all over the place, saying, hey, print this out, put it in your purse with you when you go to your dinner. And if those crazy extremist insurrectionists, if they start talking up about, the country being in a catastrophic meltdown mode, well, here's what you can do. Just go through these talking points and just tell them that's not true. And it was a big list. I mean, they really put some time into this, and a lot of it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Some of it was like Biden's trying really hard to unsnarl the supply chain. Well, what the heck does that even mean? You're working to unsnarl the supply chain? That's not very measurable. How can we determine whether you're making any strides on that little project there, Joe? So very strange stuff. And I guess that's what they do at their dinner tables, is they come prepared with talking points to win over their family members, or else they're excommunicated. You don't like Dr. Fauci? No pumpkin pie for you. Get the hell out of here. So anyways, hopefully it worked out for them. We didn't do any of that at our Thanksgiving because we're normal people, but not real sure who needs to bring talking points to their dinner tables, but okay. That's what was happening from the Biden people. But also on Twitter, Elon posted a very interesting poll, actually. He said, we've been going around and debating all of these different unbannings and lifting of suspensions and things like this. What if we just offered a mass general amnesty for everybody who had been wrongfully nuked off the platform? Yes or no? Same type of thing he did with Trump, but this time it was for everybody. And man, this poll wasn't even close. It was like 70-30 saying yes, definitely offered mass amnesty to everybody. Which is interesting because the other poll was not close at all, the Trump poll. And people were saying there were a bunch of bots on there that were influencing that poll, right? So the bring Trump back poll was 52-48 yes. And Elon acknowledged in there that there were a ton of bots. So maybe the second poll, which is now 70-30, although the sample size is much smaller. The first poll was about 15 million. This was about 4 million, I think. So maybe just a lot less people are interested in it, but maybe the answer is he also solved the bot problem. But I digress. The conclusion was, of course, offer general mass amnesty to everybody. And that might bring back a ton of those banned accounts. And there were still a lot of them out there. I mean, most people have come back at this point. Were some of the big accounts, like Project Veritas is back, Jordan Peterson's back, Babylon B's back, Trump's back, obviously we covered that one. But there's still some other people, who were sort of lesser known doctors, right? Like COVID groups and stuff that didn't get banned for anything other than medical misinformation, and so there's this idea that maybe we don't need to do this one by one. We'll just sort of lift them all up, unsuspend everything. And that's what Elon said. And basically, if you weren't spammy or trying to defraud people or you didn't break the law, Elon said that you're coming back. And I think that is a very nice, refreshing way to handle this thing. A lot of people are still throwing temper tantrums and going over to Mastodon and other places because they feel like they're losing something. And it's weird because they're And the only thing that's really happening is more people are allowed to speak, right? The reason everybody left for Parler and Gab and Rumble and Locals, right? All these other platforms was because they couldn't participate. Like, they couldn't speak. There was nowhere else for them to go. They were banned, they were suspended, thrown off platforms. So you've got no choice but to go somewhere else. That's different than you maintaining your ability to speak, but now other people can too. Other people that you disagree with. And so they're also throwing a temper tantrum, and they're going to take their toys and go home. Strange. Why are you so upset that somebody else next to you gets to speak? It's like, if you're sitting around a dinner table, a Thanksgiving dinner table, and somebody throws you out, you're going to go find a different place to eat. You got to eat somewhere. So you go get a different social media dinner. The opposite is happening here. There's plenty of food, and there's plenty of chairs at the table. You're just upset that somebody else is coming to have dinner with you? You don't have to talk to them. They're at the other end of the table. Talk to your friend, talk to your neighbors over here. You don't have to talk to them. And it's not your food anyways. And it's not your dinner. And you say, well, I can't possibly have a piece of pie next to that guy. So I gotta just get out of here. And I'm offended. Strange that you can't even sit next to people online. But they're all freaked out and they're all leaving. And I think there's probably something deeper than this, right? I think that this whole ecosystem is basically rotted to the core, or was, and is about to be exposed. So somebody else asked Elon about this. After this mass amnesty, right, people are looking through their metrics and they can see that they're getting more impressions, more followers. It's literally like somebody flipped a switch on their accounts. And I'm noticing that too. Of course, there's a lot of people who are piling onto the platform because it's fun and exciting now. But there's also people who were saying that this is not organic, right? People were tipping the scales against conservative accounts. And they're saying, Elon, you're in charge. Publish everything, bro. Like, let us see it all. Give us the emails from the journos. Give us the emails from the government. Let us know who in Twitter was putting their thumb on the scale. Let us see it all. And Elon said, okay. He said, yeah, we're going to basically have to do that. It's the only way to restore credibility is this transparency. And he actually said something like, it's worse than I thought. That this is, all of our speculation, everything we thought was going on, is definitely going on. And it's pretty bad. And he said that the only way to restore credibility to the media and to the platform and to really the entire conversation is to start to expose it. And I, just having observed and lurked on Twitter for as long as I have, and this very short time in the media space, that we've been on YouTube, which has not been long, Twitter always felt like there was a very concrete ulterior motive of all the other platforms. And even the big sort of domino effect that started with Trump and his banning, right? It mostly started with Twitter. Like, they went first. And then everybody else followed suit. It was kind of the hub, right? Everything else was kind of the spoke. All the politicians are on there. All the journalists are on there. Everybody gets their news here. And so Elon is just going to open up the whole briefcase and we're going to get to rummage through everything. Wow. And if he's saying it's worse than he thought, it's probably pretty bad, because I thought it was pretty bad. And he bought the company. That's how bad he thought it was. Spent $44 billion bucks. So I'm going to guess that, yeah, there's some real big stuff there. And that manipulated the conversation on so many stories. Holy moly. Ranging from the pandemic to the election to, well, every single issue, really. Right? The talking points will start there and they'll spread around like wildfire. And the people who are offering opposing alternative viewpoints, their voices get silenced. And then none of that gets put into the equation. And a guy that I talk a lot about is Balaji Srinivasan. And he talks about this in his book, The Network State, and on his Twitter. And he says, look, if you, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, I'm not going to try to fake them either. But he said, if you boost, like think about what happens if you boost favorable content 100x and you deboost unfavorable content 100x, right? It's the difference between that, right, is exponential, right? It's not like they're just shadow banning an account. It's times 1,000, times 10,000. Then all of those are deplatformed times 10,000. Then all of the favorable stuff is amplified times 100, times 1,000 people. Okay, he's sort of graphing this out, and he's making the point that it's not minor. It creates this cascading effect that is like earth-shattering. So these minor adjustments to a couple ideas magnified times 10,000 people, both directions, enhancement and suppression, causes a catastrophic informational breakdown. And you get bad policy as a result of that, because you don't have people who are actually debating reality, right? It's a bunch of bureaucrats in DC who say, well, this makes sense, even though it doesn't comport with the facts on the ground. So, then you just magnify that year after year, day after day, and those effects compound. And boy, you get sort of a manufactured reality, is what it seems. We've got a lot of questions about this on the pandemic, right? And what Twitter was doing and how they were interfacing with the government and big tech, other companies. We know that Fauci was deposed yesterday. We know Jen Psaki's trying very hard to get out of her deposition. We'll see if she's successful or not, but that's also coming up in December. And this is, an issue that is still very ripe. In China, they're locking down again. You may have seen videos of this, but in Beijing and elsewhere, looks like they're building some more quarantine facilities. And there's a gentleman, Peter Zeihan, who has talked about this, talking about, their policies and how they relate to their political control, and whether, if these sort of protests, evidently there was a story in China that was flying around social media that some young girl who was 4 years old basically passed away because they couldn't get her the medical care she needed, right? It wasn't COVID that killed her. It was the inability to get access. And that sort of bypassed the censors, and there were a bunch of people who were fighting back against little quarantine guards who were trying to lock them down again. So, they're living in, a hyper exaggerated version of what they are essentially trying to do here. It's like, this is like watered down a little bit. They have very strict censorship. Ours is less strict. They definitely can't debate the ideas or challenge the status quo. They definitely cannot challenge the government. We can sort of challenge the government. Kind of allowed to do it, but only in a muted sense, in a muted fashion. And there was another clip of a World Economic Forum saying that China was a very good model for the rest of the world. So you have two systems developing, one with freedom, the other with not freedom, without it. And the media is a big part of how successful those worldviews are, because they can create ideas. And if they can censor their oppositional ideas times 100 while suppressing everybody else times 1,000, that is very useful to them. And if you doubt that this is happening, look on YouTube. So, our channel, if you search for like Steve Bannon criminal trial, you will not see anything from us, because they surface the news first. They surface all the Foxes, the CNNs, they surface all of the New York Times, the Washington Post, because those are credible. Everybody else is not. Well, guess who basically is in the same club as all of those other companies, right? All of the politicians, all of the corporations, YouTube, all the big tech platforms, they're all in that upper echelon of elite. So that's why they'll show their favorable content. It's their friends. It's not other people like you and like me who are asking questions about the standard narrative. And now you amplify that, multiply that, compound that, domino that effect out. It's powerful. And Elon is now saying, that's mine. These keys are mine. And I'm going to show you what really has been going on. And I think the world will, if we do get to peer inside that, I hope we do, I think the world will be shocked. Yeah. And hopefully they'll demand better from these people. And I think part of the reason a lot of the people are fleeing is because they kind of know that they're getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And so calling Elon a racist, cruel capitalist who's a right-winger, extremist, who loves Trump, right, all of that is to try to undermine the credibility of the platform and of the man, because they know what type of substance is going to come out and they know it's not going to look good for them. And it should be a lot of fun to watch. But that, my friends, were some of the headlines on the day. And you can see it's a little bit chilly out here, but still beautiful. No sunshine out in the air, but that moonlight is peering through. But I hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving. I'm very grateful for you. I'm very thankful for you and your participation in what we do here. None of this would be possible without you. And I'm grateful for that, and you. So I do hope you had an amazing day, my friends. And you have an amazing night. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.